YouTube, the renowned video sharing site known for supplying its users with some of the most inspiring, original, and intelligent entertainment to ever grace the human race. A true website's website, dedicated to putting creators first and never succumbing to the greed, incompetence, and corporatization that runs so rampant in today's society. But not here. Nope, not one bit. Okay, I'm assuming if you're watching this video, you already know what YouTube is. At this point, you'd have to be living under a rock not to. And if you're really in depth with your knowledge, you can pretty easily debunk most of what I just said. But let's not focus too much on the negative, and instead bring our attention to the positive. Because there is a lot of genuinely great stuff on this website, you just have to go sorting through all the stuff you don't want to see in order to get to what'll interest you. And no, I'm not here to be the YouTube sheriff and tell you what you should and shouldn't watch. Everybody likes different things, but I guarantee no matter what you like, there will be much more content that you don't like versus content you do. I mean, do you know just how much stuff is uploaded to this website every day? It's insane how much there is. And I've been using YouTube for a long time. Long before I was even allowed to have an account, and I still know I haven't even scratched the surface of the surface of the surface of the surface of the surface. And I've been around the block, don't you know? I feel like I've seen it all. I was alive and, at least semi-conscious for every major era of YouTube. Not to toot my own horn too much or anything. But in time, I've seen certain channels stand out to me, grab me, and stick with me in ways that not every other has. There are a lot of channels out there, and I'm sure we all have our favorites. Well, these are mine. I mean, favorite isn't all I'm taking into account. It's also about what I've watched the most, which ones inspired me to do what I do the most, so, screw it. Welcome to EnnEmmEe's top 10 favorite / most inspiring / most watched / whatever the hell else I put on the end of this YouTube channels. I really need to get better at naming these things. Oh, and one more thing. For the purposes of this video, no drama or anything of that sort will be included in the discussion of any of these channels. But I'm not going to be talking about any of that in this video. It doesn't matter, most of the channels on this list are pretty drama-free anyway, so it's really no big deal, but I just wanted to make that clear. Okay, now we can start. Actually, we can't. I've got one more thing I need to mention. I'm not really going to be giving much of an introduction to these channels since most of these are pretty popular and I don't want to take up time unnecessarily. If at any point you come across a channel on this list that you're not familiar with, check them out. I'm linking all of them below, so go see for yourself. Okay, now we can start.
Number 10.
Horror is one of the most varied and ubiquitous genres in all of fiction. So many subgenres and subgenres within subgenres and other genres mixed in with this genre. Horror is everywhere, so an entire channel dedicated to almost nothing but horror certainly has plenty of material to work with. And that brings us to our number 10 spot, Dead Meat, home of the kill count, where they tally up the victims and all yeah, you know the rest. Now, I'll be honest, when I first started compiling this list, these guys were originally going to be at like number 3, but through careful consideration, other channels popping up, remembering other ones that I failed to mention, they eventually ended up getting bumped back a few spots, but nevertheless, this is still a pretty good channel. Obviously, the kill count is what Dead Meat is most known for, and I love that show. You could even say, I love it to death. But there's also other stuff on the channel, so we don't get oversaturated with nothing but kill counts. But since they do make up most of the channel's content, I'm gonna mostly just talk about that. I think the show, in its current form, works so well because while it is, at heart, still a review show, in a way, it's almost more reminiscent of a documentary than anything else. I've learned a lot from these videos. Movies that I thought I knew inside and out, I still ended up learning a thing or two about just from watching their kill counts. Continuing with the documentary comparisons, this series also excels in its hosts. Of course, as the longest serving and most frequent host, we all know James A. Janice, and he really strikes a balance between being energized but not overbearing. I feel like some people don't quite know how to strike that balance, but James really nails it, always keeping that energy and charisma, never feeling boring, but not being too extra. Of Or since January 2022, we've had other hosts come along, and they've both done well filling James's shoes. I honestly wouldn't mind seeing them come back to host more episodes, or more people coming along. This series is much bigger than one man at this point, and I'm okay with that. Dead Meat and the Kill Count series is very informative and easy to watch, thanks in large part to its several wonderful hosts and the clear passion they and everyone behind the scenes has for the horror genre. The fact that it's only number 10 on this list says a lot more about what's coming next than it does about this channel. So check it out if you haven't already, and if you like horror. Not everyone does. Okay, moving on.
Number 9.
For whatever reason, when I was younger, I had this idea that Let's Play channels were kind of frowned upon as lesser entertainment, and that I was somehow inferior or stupid for liking and enjoying them. I'm not entirely sure why. It's not like I had this idea reinforced by a lot of people at the time. I think it's just because I spent a lot of time watching videos that, being honest, did require a lot more thought and effort and editing time, and I just kind of got this feeling that I was doing those videos and channels a disservice by also watching videos that just consisted of people playing video games and having fun. Nowadays, I don't really see anything wrong with it though, and I've grown more appreciation over time for the fact that there is a genuine method to the madness that makes these videos appealing to some and not so much to others. Now, I've watched a lot of Let's Play videos and channels, and if I tried to fit them all into this video, they'd probably take up half the list, if not more. So I think I'm just gonna pick the one I've seen the most of, and have that act as a placeholder for the genre as a whole. The Vanoss crew. The cornerstone of so much in my, and many others, early to mid-2010s nostalgic memories. It's kind of weird that years like 2013 and 2014 are now considered nostalgic, but I guess that feeling just sets in earlier than I used to think. Evan and company have been doing what they're doing as we know it since 2013 or so, and I started watching not long after that, and I think they're a pretty good example of the style of videos done right. This is literally just some guy and his friends playing video games, nothing more. But that's what makes it work. It doesn't try to be anything more than what it is, and sometimes it's just nice to have a channel and a crew that totally embraces what they're all about. The Vanoss crew, as they're colloquially known, have a real sense of camaraderie and play off each other very well, which is a real factor in my and many others' enjoyment. We're having fun because we know they are. It's a psychological response I can't personally explain, but it's there and serves as a primary source of enjoyment for me. I also like how highly edited Vanoss's videos are, which is part of what led me to choosing him over some of his friends. His decision to trim the fat and not show every painstaking second of gameplay helps give the videos a fast-paced, almost rhythm to them that just makes them so easy to watch. I really don't know what else to add here, since I can't really elaborate too much on why this channel and this crew work so well for me. I just love them though, and I'm really glad to finally be discovering that other people do too.
Number 8.
Who doesn't love a good story? Who doesn't love animation? Who doesn't love time? Actually, everyone. Fuck time. But hey, we all gotta deal with it, so when you put these things together, you get animated storytime channels. Another genre of YouTube that's kind of hard to really get a feel for how they're perceived in the greater YouTube landscape. I mean, popularity-wise, they're making a friggin' mint. Instant cash money as far as I can see. And, you know, they tend to be pretty family and advertiser friendly and can appeal to a wide variety of people. Are they a little numerous? Yeah, but there's a lot of lives to live and a lot of stories to tell on the internet, so it's really no surprise that so many of us want to know all about them. As for my favorite channels in this category, well, the obvious choice is The Odd Ones Out, who's kind of the great-granddaddy of them all, but for my personal tastes, I have a channel almost as influential and popular that I happen to like just a tad bit more, and it's the one that could easily be considered the runner-up to The Odd Ones Out in terms of popularity and influentiality. I don't really know what about Jaden Animations hits different for me than other channels in this category, which justifies me putting her on this list instead of someone else. I guess as far as these animation story channels go, it all comes down to animation and story, which Jaden seems to have down. Jaden's art style is very simple, but also nice to look at and presumably easy to animate? I don't know, I'm so animation illiterate that I could be way off here, I'm just guessing. Either way, her videos look great, and from what I understand, she doesn't make them all by herself anymore, but that never hurt nobody. YouTube YouTubing is allowed to be a collaborative process. Let's not make that out like it's illegal. And as for the story part of it, what do you want me to say? I like the stories or subjects that she covers and the way she presents them. It's not really hard to understand, but it can only be put so many ways. What, do you want me to compare to other animated story channels and talk about how this person's life is way more interesting than this person's life? This channel gets a 10 out of 10, and this person should just quit because their life is boring. It's a story channel, or, well, they're not always narratives, but you know what I mean. It's not really something that's meant to be analyzed, you just kind of take them for what they are. Jaden's videos are charming. They're endearing. They're easy to watch. I guess I could discuss the ethics of exposing so much of your life and personal experiences to millions of strangers, but we don't have to talk about that right now. Plus, I mean, it's not like she gets too personal. How unfortunate. I'm stalling with this one. Jaden Animations. It's a good channel. You probably already know that if you're watching this video, so I'll just shut up and move on.
Number 7.
Wow, really moving through the big popular genres with this one, aren't I? Yes, film criticism is indeed a very lucrative and popular style of content, and while Dead Meat kind of qualifies as such, there are many others that I'm simply drawn to more. Yeah, spoilers, this won't be the last channel in this category on this list, but it's nevertheless one of the most popular and, in my opinion, for good reason. That channel is yourmoviesucks.org. When did reviews of movies on YouTube start getting long? When was it deemed no longer acceptable for a film review to just be a straightforward comedic put-down that usually didn't take up much of the audience's time? How long has it been since we as a society decided that lengthy dissection with lots of technical terms and random tangents, usually either being split into multiple parts, dabbling into the hour-plus length bracket, or both, was decided upon as the best way to criticize art? I don't know. I don't even know if it started with Adam, but he certainly was an early adopter, and one of the better examples of this sort of long-form review style, I think. Of course, there's more on his channel than just his main YMS series, but as for that series, I think it's one that strikes a great balance between genuine analysis and comedy. These videos can be very funny, but not in the sense that they're trying to make you laugh every single second. The humor is less obvious and in your face, and more so relies on wry wit and some clever editing, and it works. Adam himself really nails that asshole reviewer shtick to a T. He's kind of archetypal in that sense, and he's been around so long that it's no surprise some have tried to follow in his footsteps. Now, when I say he's been around for a long time, that comes with the caveat that some of his older videos do feel like a product of their time in many ways, like more so than other YouTubers who have been around here for just as long, if not longer. But even that I can kind of enjoy as sort of like a time capsule of what the internet was back then. And hey, I might be saying the same thing 10 years from now about his current stuff. Your Movie Sucks is really kind of a great encapsulation of what these longer, more analytical videos can be when put in the hands of someone who actually knows what they're talking about and has charisma and a presence that makes you want to listen to them. Again, more so now than back then, but overall it's a solid channel, and I'm giving this channel a 6 out of 10. See what I did there? Oh, God, kill me. Not actually. I subscribe to the notion that if there is a God, they must have a sense of humor, so for my sake, I hope they also understand sarcasm.
Number 6.
Game reviewers, am I right? Who doesn't love those? Who doesn't like being introduced to yet another man cave-dwelling troglodyte man-child? Well, as it turns out, not too many. This is some of the most popular content on YouTube. Certainly the most popular review-based content, I think. Movie reviewers are a close second, but I think game review channels and series just edge them out. And yet again, this will not be the last time I feature such a channel on the list. But for my number 6 choice, I'm going with one of my favorites, Categories. So remember what I said about YMS and how I commended him for not relying on super energetic and in-your-face humor in order to be funny? Well, I would hope so, because that was only a few minutes ago, so if you don't, you might have some short-term memory loss. But if you do, and you're familiar with this channel, you'll know that can't really be said for old Caddy. But you know what? It really works here. Once again, this is a channel that's very dependent on editing to get a lot of the humor across, and Caddy is a king of video editing in my eyes. This man knows his way around Premiere Pro is all I'm saying. But it's not just the energetic editing that makes this channel worth staying for, It's that behind all that, you have a genuinely good presenter with a real eye for observation about whatever he's reviewing. He knows just what to point out, how to point it out, and how to maximize the comedic potential from it, and that's not bound by editing. But with that said, his editing is really good. It's most of where his humor comes from as far as I'm concerned. I don't know what kind of wizardry this man, or whoever is behind the scenes on these things, has at their fingertips, but good lord, learn to share it with the rest of us. What makes it great though is, again, that's not all there is. There's legitimate comedy and critique even under that shiny veneer that makes his videos more than just style over substance. It's still good comedic writing that maximizes the comedic potential out of the video subject. Backed up by how well put together the videos are from a behind the scenes standpoint, that's more than worth a spot on this list. Oh, and I also think his progression over the years from his earlier videos to his latest ones is one of the more fascinating ones to observe, since it's both obvious that whatever spark he has now was there from the beginning, but has also been developed and refined over time, getting us to where we are now. With some creators' earlier work, it's hard to believe they'd eventually become who we know them as today, and with others, it just seems like nothing's improved. But with Caddy, I can watch his latest video contrasted with his very first, and still see the seeds being planted. There's always been something there, but the years have certainly given it time to blossom. That's just something I wanted to point out.
Number 5.
Toy reviewers don't exactly have the best standing on YouTube, tending to be seen as overly kid-friendly, not really appealing to anyone over the age of 8, and just being seen as kind of bizarre that so many grown men are still playing with toys. I suppose that's fair to an extent, but if they can make it entertaining and not overly babyish just because it's toys, I'm fine with them. Now, to be clear, not every channel has to constantly be vulgar or inappropriate in order to appeal to non-infants, but it is a style, and it is popular, and if it's done well, it's done well. So that brings us to Jobby the Honk. Yeah, this is one where I feel like I need to make it clear that this channel is not for everybody. Not just because it's a toy review channel, but also because if you're someone whose sense of humor has evolved past that of a 12-year-old, you might want to pass on this one. Luckily, my humor never evolved past middle schooler level, so I'm okay with this. Makes you wonder why Jobby tries to discourage kids from watching his videos when, being realistic, they're probably the ones who'd find it funniest. This is yet another channel where I gotta commend the editing. If Cat Icarus is an editing king, Jobby is a goddamn editing deity. A divine spirit descended from the heavens to grace us with his mastery of Premiere Pro. On top of that, he's certainly got a lot of personality to match his wacky editing. He's like if Filthy Frank had a toy review channel. I almost considered just putting him on the list, but I think I'm only sticking to active channels, so no dice. Another thing I gotta commend, which might seem like an odd thing to point out, but I really do want to highlight it, is the pace of Jobby's videos. You know, how they're put together, how it all plays out, how long certain parts last in comparison to other parts. His videos don't have a lot of dead space in them. There's not a second wasted. It all has purpose and presence, and okay, this is kind of a hard sell, but sometimes you have to appreciate the intent and purpose behind something, anything, even if on the surface it might just seem like the most moronic thing ever. It might still very well be, but it makes me laugh, and I can appreciate the work that goes into creating something so beautifully weird and wacky, all based around something as innocent as playing with toys. If by toys we really mean insanely high quality collector's items that cost hundreds of dollars a piece and are recommended to be kept out of reach of children. Same thing. So, if you like your playtime coming with an added dose of what the fuck it all, I say check it out. The one downside I have for this channel is that I don't understand the point of having lore in these kinds of videos. I don't get it, but I could just skip past those parts in the videos. I can live with it, as you'd hope I would. It would be some next level pussy shit to actually die from a YouTuber making a creative decision I don't agree with, but I guess that's not out of the question for some people.
Number 4.
Who is old enough to remember these days, when we all lived in blissful ignorance of the goings-on at good old Channel Awesome HQ? Yes, it seems like only yesterday that damn document came out and ruined our perfect little fantasy. That was already kind of falling apart by then, but still, of course, in the wake of all of that 4-year-old drama? Jesus, ask your dad to stop the flow of time, why don't you? Many talented creators have managed to separate from the company relatively unscathed. While it might seem unfair to open this spot on the list with a spiel about Channel Awesome, it helps to contextualize this spot, as there really are a lot of great channels that either got their start or really hit their stride here, and while things may have ended in disaster, we can at least acknowledge these former CA producers as the talented creators that they are. With that said, my number 4 pick for this list is Phelan Porteous. Part of the fun with this channel, like mine, is being able to talk about whatever I want and not tie myself to any kind of theme or structure. Well, part of my inspiration for that comes from Phelan. This guy just talks about whatever the fuck he wants, and he always makes it entertaining. I mean, how funny is it that I've talked about toy review channels, video game review shows, and movie reviewers, and 2 of Phelan's most popular series are about 2 of those things, and 1 has an offshoot that's about the other one. This guy's a jack of all trades. Well, jack of all trades, master of none may not be an enviable position for everyone, but I appreciate the variety and the wide amount of content to choose from. Bootleg Zones may be my personal favorite of them all, but Phelan in the movies is also very fun and easy to watch. I think what the appeal of both is just discovering how much info someone can uncover about the most obscure things. Similar to Dead Meat, but to an even more effective degree, Phelan really finds that sweet spot between conveying information and comedy. Granted, not every joke works, and some do rely a lot on you as a viewer doing your homework and watching a bunch of other stuff to get the reference, but even bad jokes aren't dragged out or treated as just so much funnier than they are, so they never get annoying. Phelan himself is another love it or hate it element to this channel, as his persona is built around being super animated and wacky, as well as very sarcastic. That kind of winking to the camera, super meta stuff isn't for everybody, but I don't mind it, and I certainly think it's worth it to watch him talk about shit like this. Keep it coming, Phelan. I and many others will keep watching.
Number 3.
I love kaiju. Really, I do. I mean, how could I not? After all, it's just basic reasoning and logic that leads to this conclusion. Monsters are cool. Japan is cool. Giants are cool. Therefore, Japanese giant monsters must be like cool cubed, right? Well, they are, in my
Totally factual
opinion. But I admit, even for a huge kaiju geek like myself, it can be tricky sometimes to keep track of all of this information. Okay, no it isn't, but for others, I get it. I mean, totaling nearly 40 films across nearly 7 decades, it's easy to see why newcomers especially would be somewhat daunted by the prospect of trying to wrap their head around our 300-foot tall scaly messiah. Wouldn't it be great if there was a channel all about Godzilla and other related properties, dedicated to informing and educating die-hard and casual fans alike? Oh wait, there is! Several actually, but this is my personal favorite. Wikizilla has always been one of my favorite resources for learning about this kaiju shit over the past few years, because even though I've been a fan for a long time, it always takes a channel like this to show even hardcore fans how much they don't know, how much there's still to learn about this or that IP, and how often the real-world stories behind these monsters can be just as interesting as the monsters themselves. Their Kaiju Profile series, in which they detail and relay the specs and history, both real-world and in-universe, of a specific monster are great. Very informative, almost playing out like mini documentaries, and everything else posted to the channel is of similar high quality, really succeeding at being informative while never being boring. Unlike similar information-focused channels, this one doesn't really try its hand at being comedic, but that's what's so great about it, is that it doesn't need to be. I'm perfectly content with just learning about kaiju movies without feeling the need to joke around. It might seem like a no-brainer, but most of the channels on this list put moderate to a majority of their focus on being funny. And while it works, this one doesn't need to. I'm aware some of my feelings towards this channel might just come from the affection I have for the franchise it's associated with, and that if you're not a G fan or tokusatsu or kaiju fan, you might not find much to like here. But if you are a casual fan looking to know more, or even a diehard fan who thinks they know everything, see this channel and be pleasantly surprised.
Number 2.
What, at its core, makes a good review show? Overlong sketches? No. Weird, random, reoccurring plot lines that require you to do homework in the form of watching other videos for you to understand them? No. Reviews that long overstay their welcome and end up dragging things out to a ridiculous extent? No. Then what is it? Simple. A good reviewer and a good subject of review. Sometimes that's all you need. And that brings us to my number 2 choice, the criminally underrated Brandon Tenold. This guy has flown under the YouTube radar for so long, it's upsetting. Yeah, he has over 200,000 subscribers, so he has gotten a play button, and received plenty of recognition in the comments, but I rarely hear his name brought up. None of his gags or moments have become known by people outside of his viewer base. I barely hear any mention of this channel anywhere, and I've had just about enough of this man's work going largely unnoticed by the greater YouTube landscape. He really has boiled the snarky reviewer formula down to its most essential elements and does his absolute most with it. Now, Brandon mainly focuses on cult movies, weird and usually older films that not many people have heard of, with some notable exceptions. Maybe that's why so many just haven't heard of the guy, but like with Phaelus, I really think that aspect is what drew me in all those years ago. I just like watching things that no one has seen before and learning all about how they came to be. And while Brandon may not be as informative as some other channels here, that only allows him to focus his attention on what really draws me into his show. The comedy. I'm gonna be real with you. This show is genuinely hysterical a lot of the time. The riffing abilities this man has, and just his sheer power when it comes to wisecracking, I can only dream to harness one day. And the fact that he mainly focuses on obscure cult movies that often contain no shortage of material to work with certainly helps, which I guess could be seen as a crutch, and yeah, are the episodes where he's praising a movie as an underrated gem as funny as the ones where he's just spitting quips left and right at the movie's expense? No, but I still appreciate him shining the spotlight on a hidden gem deserving of recognition. And speaking of hidden gems worthy of more recognition, I think this channel is in desperate need of more people knowing about it. I can't act like I can do much about it personally, but I hope someone comes along and rockets this channel into the YouTube big leagues, because he has been at this for over 10 years, and I still feel like he deserves more praise. Plus, he's a fellow G fan, which just bumps him up like 3 spaces automatically, in my opinion. And now, before we get to the number 1 spot, I'd like to take a moment to spotlight a few honorable mentions. Game Grumps. Yes, I know I made a whole video praising these two in their show, but as stated in that very video, I do still consider the show itself to be a bit hit and miss, and while the hits did hit hard enough for me to consider them for this list, their consistency of quality just doesn't meet the standard that's required for making it on here. Jacksepticeye, another really great gaming / let's play channel that sadly just got beaten out by the one I'd been watching for longer and personally found more enjoyment in. The Odd Ones Out, similar deal here. Love James and his content, but I just like Jaden's a bit more, and I tried to keep it to one storytime channel, so James unfortunately didn't make the cut. Pro Jared. I think this segment is mostly just ones where I find there's a better alternative, because again, I like Pro Jared, I enjoy his videos very much, but Cat Icarus' style is personally more my cup of tea, so I went with him instead. Penguin Zero, or Critical, or Moist Critical, or I don't know, whatever the hell this asshole wants to call him. Commentary channels aren't personally my thing, but I acknowledge there's a good way and a bad way to do it, and as far as that goes, Charlie is the gold standard. Honestly, you could just consider him my number 11. Linkara, another former Channel Awesome producer and a comic reviewer, which is a niche I don't see occupied by anyone else. Behavior and attitude towards people making jokes at his expense aside, I enjoy his videos and appreciate the space they occupy in the YouTube landscape, but he just didn't quite make the list. Jarvis Johnson. Similar to Penguin Zero, if you're gonna do commentary videos, you might as well do them right, and Jarvis does them about as right as you can. Definitely a contender, but ultimately lost out. Monster Island Buddies. And finishing off the honorable mentions, we have EnnEmmEee. Both the main show and the review-focused videos were and are huge parts of my Godzilla and monster-related content fix. But I already had Wikizilla on the list, and I appreciate their informative videos a tad more, so I went with them. And with all that out of the way, my number 1 favorite / most inspirational / oh who gives a shit at this point channel is...
Number 1.
What can I even say that hasn't already been said? To call Cinemassacre and James Rolfe an iconic and important piece of internet history would be a tragic understatement. The amount of careers and channels and creators that owe themselves in no small part to James and the AVGN series is nearly unfathomable. I mean, just look at the channel you're watching this video on right now. I've been watching James and his stuff since I was 7 years old, one of my first real exposures to this kind of video making. And now here I am all these years later following in his footsteps. Footsteps that so many others have followed in before me. But you already know that. Everyone knows the influence that AVGN and James's other work has had on the YouTube content creating space. But why? What about AVGN works so well? I mean, yeah, he's funny, and we all enjoy watching him call this or that game a diarrhea doo-doo-ass shitload of fuck farts, but there's more than that. I mean, I'm not just talking about AVGN either, I'm talking about Cinemassacre. James. What is the secret sauce in that makes it so special? Well, maybe it's that James and the Cinemassacre brand speaks to the inner creative in all of us. It represents perfectly what YouTube, and the internet really, was designed for. Expression. Doing a lot with a little, or rather creating something from nothing. What started as just a guy in a small corner of his house talking about video games has spiraled out of control into a franchise. We've got over 200 episodes, 3 million subscribers on YouTube, a whole damn feature film made about it, and all of it came from the most unlikely place, and a place that it's very unlikely any of this could have stemmed from if it weren't for YouTube. Not that unlikely success stories didn't happen prior to the internet, but they were certainly made a lot easier and much more achievable in the eyes of many thanks to sites like YouTube, and it was up to people like James to show us that it could be done and sustained for many, many years. Now, that's an easy declaration to make, but it does bring me to an increasingly common observation with the AVGN, and that is the show's perceived decline in quality. Here's the thing about that. No show is meant to last forever. No show will last forever. All shows have their peaks and valleys, and even the people that we view in such high esteem as the most infallible and perfect people on the planet can sometimes disappoint us. But here's what I have to say. The thing that really justifies this placement for me, the thing that really leads me to believe I made the right decision, is that even if AVGN just can't exist in this day and age, if it's really just run its course and it's time to lay it to rest, let it rest in peace forever, hey, I'll always be willing to just sit down and listen to James talk about movies. That I can't see myself ever getting tired of. This man's passions are clear. The whole show was born out of his dreams as a filmmaker. When he talks about movies, discusses nostalgia, and anything else he has an affinity for, you can tell that's where his priorities lie. Even if AVGN isn't what it used to be, not only do I think Cinemassacre can survive without it, but I also think that, after all this time, they've left us with a pretty good reserve of videos from over the years. I think we can get by on those, right? And who knows, maybe we won't have to. As of 2022, AVGN has been slowing its uploads, and all the episodes this year were entirely written and directed by James, and it shows. Maybe there is some hope. You might not see it, but I do. I do. So yeah, that about does it. Let me know what some of your favorite YouTube channels are, and if you're a fellow content creator, let me know what are some of the channels or people that inspired you to do what you do, whatever that may be. If you'd like to contest any of the spots on this list, or tell me why my taste in channels and entertainment is garbage, you can do that too. Any engagement is better than nothing, honestly. I'll take what I can get. Anyway, that'll about do it for this video. Next one's going to be another top 10 list, so get excited for that. Or don't, it's up to you. But until then, see ya. The humor is less obvious and in your face, and more so relies on wry wit and fuck, that was perfect. Why did I mess it up?